It's hard to think of a developer that's enjoyed such a meteoric rise as From Software has. From Demon's Souls all the way to last year's Game of the Year, Elden Ring, the studio has stuck to its core design tenets to craft an entirely new subgenre, the Soulsborne. And yet, in 2023, FromSoft delve into the dark depths of series past and brings one of the studio's earliest franchises back into the light. Armored Core 6 isn't a Soulsborne title, at least not in a traditional sense, but it remains resolute in its commitment to many similar design principles from the games that made the studio one of the most revered in today's gaming landscape. The result, as far as we could glean from a behind-closed-doors hands-off demo, has the potential to reignite the mech action genre. And I think we can all agree there hasn't been nearly enough of those over the last few years. One of the most impressive elements of Elden Ring was how it ensured every possible playstyle felt viable. From flinging meteor spells to role-playing a samurai, there was no right way to play. Armored Core 6 smartly leans into this, and in our look at an early build of the game, we saw the ability to tackle skirmishes with standard fair enemies by scanning ahead to get the drop on them, firing volleys of rockets from a distance, or getting in close with the assault boost to close the gap. And that boost looks a lot zippier to use than the now iconic Dark Souls dodge, and you'll need it as well, not just in combat, but to traverse Armored Core 6's large maps. In the demo, we saw some kind of industrial complex of overlapping bridges and builds, all brimming with detail. One wrong step would lead to a steep drop, but thankfully the improved movement options definitely afford plenty of potential for wild action sequences. There's even a vertical catapult to send your mech careening to even greater heights, and recover from that aforementioned wrong step off a long drop, to deal death and destruction to the unfortunate enemies you come across. Not everything is there to help you though. Armored Core 6 will feature both more open areas and more confined ones, with the latter leaning more into the Souls shtick of keeping enemies just out of sight. In the demo we saw, that means an enemy jumped down from above to get the drop on the player. But you can turn the tables, you can scan the area to locate threats before you round a corner, and unleash enough firepower to blow up the moon. So speaking of firepower, what of the weapons? We saw a primary weapon with rapid fire, an impressive display of missiles, and melee combat, as well as a defensive shield which could be crucial in those smaller combat areas where space is at a premium. Naturally, we're yet to get a hands-on, but as we watch the demo mech glide gracefully around the mission, it's clear combat will offer the kind of feedback you'd expect from a 2023 game only launching on current generation consoles and PC. We watched the mech in our demo move fairly quickly through smaller enemies with relative ease, before being absolutely decimated by a larger, more challenging foe. It's here that we saw the customization menu with players able to duck out from a defeat, retool their mech, and get back into the action from the last checkpoint. Building your walking, or rolling, death machine in Armored Core games of the past has often felt overly complicated and akin to building your own robot from scratch. The process muddied by a mass of menus and stats, and while much of that remains, it's much more nicely laid out here and seems to be at least a bit more accessible, at least in the build we saw. The system looks flexible too, with our demo mech pilot swapping out parts to counter specific threats, moving to a more manoeuvrable pair of legs, dropping explosives from the ceiling and utilising a stagger mechanic that stuns an enemy to prepare for multiple critical hits. A build that quickly saw the machine that kicked us into the curb last time destroyed at the second time of asking. And that focus on build creativity could be where Armored Core 6 finds its legs, and feels like FromSoft going full circle. Smartly leaning into a more accessible build system to mix up the playstyles might be what keeps its community coming back for months after launch, just like Elden Ring did and still does to this day. The mission finishes with a huge boss battle with a machine of truly staggering size. Sadly, we didn't get to see whether the pilot managed to defeat it, but according to the game's lead producer, Yasunori Agura, giving a sense of satisfaction and accomplishment after finishing a battle is what makes Armored Core 6 unique. That means it's likely that players can expect a sizable learning curve and pretty high difficulty level, something Soulsborne fans will definitely get a kick out of. But we'll know more about that when we finally get a hands-on for ourselves. Armored Core 6 feels like it takes just the right amount from the likes of Elden Ring and mixes it in with its own heritage to make something flashy, explosive, and full of creative opportunities. In a world sadly become bereft of any mech action games, let alone truly great ones, this hands-off demo crystallised our belief that if anything can rebuild the genre, it's Armored Core 6. Are you looking forward to Armored Core 6? Or are you reserving judgment until we get our hands on our new mech of mass destruction? Let us know what you're thinking down in the comments. Stick with us here at GG Recon for all your Armored Core 6 news and guides coming up, and check out these videos to see more of what we do here at GG Recon.